This is Autoline Daily, the show dedicated to enthusiasts of the global automotive industry. That attack on a power station near Tesla's assembly plant in Berlin has one German politician calling it a form of terrorism. And German police believe that a note claiming responsibility by extreme environmentalists called the Volcano Group is authentic. The attack shut down electricity to the plant and to the surrounding area, and it's going to be costly. Tesla says the plant will be shut down for at least a week, meaning the company will lose at least 6,000 units of production worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. Even scarier, Tesla had to go into emergency mode to shut down aluminum smelters for gigacastings before that aluminum in them solidified, which would have caused enormous damage. This was the second attack on the electric supply to the plant, and there was a third attack on a nearby rail system. And Tesla was not the only one affected by the latest attack. Electricity was cut to tens of thousands of people in the area, including hospitals and retirement homes. And German police are pulling out all the stops to find the culprits. We've been talking about that price war in China, and BYD just launched a full frontal assault. You know that electric BYD Seagull with a base price of only $10,200? Well, now it only costs $9,700 after another 5% price cut. We don't see any changes to its major components or hardware, so we're guessing added scale allowed BYD to cut the price. It sold over 280,000 examples of the Seagull last year, and it continues to expand the model globally, where it's called the Dolphin Mini in some markets. And if you'd like to learn more about this EV, we've got a video that gets into some of the specs, other ways BYD is able to keep the price so low, and we even take it on a test drive in the parking lot. But speaking of that global expansion of Chinese EVs, they're surging in Australia, which could have a big impact on automakers like Ford and Toyota, who really don't have many EVs to sell to customers. Not surprisingly, BYD is leading the charge. While Tesla was first to the market in 2014 and dominated with 53% of the EV segment last year, BYD has increased its share of the EV segment to 14% in just 2 years, and it plans to launch 3 new models this year, which will bring its total to 6. It's also going to expand its dealer network in Australia, and MG, which is owned by Chinese automaker SAIC, will add 3 new models to the market as well. And China's success in exporting EVs has got politicians in Europe and the US clamoring for trade restrictions. In Europe, government officials say they have evidence the Chinese government is subsidizing EVs exported to Europe through a, quote, direct transfer of funds, and government supplies of goods and services, quote, for less than adequate remuneration, end quote. From a legal standpoint, that's important language. The EU will start registrations of Chinese EVs at customs this week, which means they could be hit with retroactive tariffs if the EU decides to impose them. The EU says that Chinese EV imports have increased 14% since it launched its investigation last October. And if they continue at that rate, the EU says it could harm Europe's auto industry. The Chinese Chamber of Commerce shot back saying it's disappointed in the EU's decision, and the boost in EV imports just reflects the growing demand for Chinese EVs. The EU is expected to finish its investigation by November. Meanwhile, over in the US, Republican Senator Marco Rubio is proposing legislation to boost tariffs on Chinese-made vehicles. He wants to increase import tariffs by 20 grand, extend tariffs to vehicles made by Chinese automakers in other countries like Mexico, and limit subsidies for EVs that don't meet North American free trade rules. Even though there aren't many Chinese-made vehicles exported to the US, with this being an election year, we can expect a lot of other politicians to jump on the anti-China bandwagon. Nissan is struggling to sell new cars to retail customers in the U.S., so it's turning to fleet sales to keep its volume up. Selling new cars to fleets can be an attractive business, as long as it only constitutes about 10% or less of a company's sales. But Automotive News reports that last month, fleet sales accounted for 44% of all of Nissan's sales, and that's a clear danger signal. Nissan's goal is to cut fleet sales to about 15%, but it's been running around 25% until this latest surge. When fleets like daily rental companies buy large amounts of cars, they get sold at a discount, which hurts a car company's profit margins. Worse, the rental companies like Hertz, Avis, and Enterprise typically only keep a car for 6 to 8 months and then sell them just before they hit 30,000 miles. Then they sell those cars, which dumps a bunch of nearly new cars onto the market, which hurts the residual value of brand new cars. Clearly, Nissan needs to boost its retail sales, and that means a lot of sales incentives could be on the way. When it comes to electric cars, Americans seem to have a fixation on range anxiety, and so automakers are reacting to it. Bloomberg reports that there are now 30 different EV models that offer more than 300 miles of range, or 482 kilometers. And that's a 500% increase in long-range EVs over the last 3 years. And another 20 EVs with over 300 miles of range will hit the market this year. But the demand for longer range comes at a price. They require bigger batteries that add a lot of cost and weight to a car. And in a related development, public EV charging stations in the US are seeing a big surge in usage. Their utilization rate doubled last year from 9 to 18%, which is actually something of a magic number, because once a charging station hits a 15% utilization rate, it becomes profitable. So many stations are making money for the first time. Some parts of the country have even higher usage rates, with Illinois being the highest at 25%. Bloomberg reports that the US now has one fast charging station for about 16 gas stations, and that by the end of last year, every fast charging cord in the country was plugged in for an average of nearly 5 hours a day. GM got $26 million in funding to help demonstrate real-life applications of fuel cell technology. It's launching a pilot project to test out an entire hydrogen-based microgrid at a power company in the US and Georgia. Medium-duty trucks, built on a similar frame to the Chevy Silverado 5500, will be used for the test, and they feature a Hydrotec fuel cell system, which produces up to 300 kilowatts of power and over 300 miles of driving range. They also operate on a native 800-volt architecture and have a 19,500-pound gross vehicle weight rating. Fuel cell-powered EV chargers to charge up other electric vehicles at the company will be used as well, but we think the most important part of the test is on-site hydrogen generation. GM partnered with Nel Hydrogen to incorporate its electrolyzers into the microgrid, which can produce green hydrogen for the vehicles. And a recent guest on Autoline After Hours thinks producing hydrogen on-site could be a big business in the future. Larry Burns, former head of R&D at GM and someone who led groundbreaking work on fuel cells, sees a day when Amazon produces hydrogen at its distribution centers and then brings canisters right to you, not only for your car, but for your home as well. Rivian will reveal its new R2 compact crossover tomorrow, but some details about the model have already leaked. A Tesla Rivian owner posted on X that he found source code data on Rivian's website with info about the EV. It says it will have a starting price of $47,500 before shipping, a range of 330 miles, and it will be about the same size as a Tesla Model Y. Other details include a maximum ground clearance of 9.8 inches, a 0 to 60 time of 3 seconds, and seating for up to 5 people. Rivian declined to comment on the leak, but the R2 goes into production in 2026 at Rivian's new plant in Georgia that's still under construction. Even though there's a price war raging in China, in the US, there's a problem with affordability. So how does the auto industry solve it? Be sure to tune in to Autoline After Hours tomorrow when Jim Hall, Jack Keebler, and Chris Thomas tackle the problem. We invite you to learn about who they are and what they have to say. But that's a wrap for this show. Thanks for making Autoline a part of your day.
Autoline Daily is brought to you by Bridgestone, solutions for your journey, and by Intrepid Control Systems, over-the-air engineering. Boost your game. We want to know what drives your testing. OTA, connected car, diagnostics, remote testing. Intrepid Control Systems is here to help you work from anywhere. Intrepid Control Systems, driven by your data.